The reason why they don't prioritize our life and they don't prioritize maternal health is because they know that the Black woman is the apex of the community and she is the anchor of the community. And when we lose a Black life, and particularly a Black woman's life, it disorganizes our communities, right? It leaves our community distorted with grief. It means that we lose economic potential. It means that we lose that support network, that glue, right? And they know that. That is the value of Black matriarchy, is that we hold the universe together by our fingertips.
Compost and cotton and cornrows.
Welcome to the Compost, Cotton, and Cornrows podcast, and I'm your host, Dominique Drakeford. Today, I'm joined by Latham Thomas, global birth justice leader and the founder of Mama Glow, for a conversation about sustainability as regeneration, Black matriarchy, and why care work has always been revolutionary. Let's get into it. Latham, thank you so much for taking the time, energy, and space to join the pod.
Thank you for having me, Dominique.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just having the phenom who is literally building a liberation economy through birth work and maternal health and wellness
Mm.
is incredible to have you share space with us. And before we get started, I'd love to center and ground our conversation in having you define sustainability.
Mm. Sustainability is the capacity for regeneration, for it's the intelligence to um, implement foresight in an intention in all of our actions, that they may be bountiful and bless those who come after us.
Mm,
Um, I think it's an operation mindset and heart space that orients us to honor those who've come before us, what's presently available, and dream on how we want to leave a place and leave a space. And it is about generating abundance
mm,
um, so that those who are we're in community with can thrive, can live off of what is already here. And I believe it's about, like co-creation,
mm,
and just like really being mindful of like kind of the life force energy that animates everything around us, right? All living things, our environment, the internal landscape, that is also infinite, but our physical bodies have like finite limitations. And so I feel like part of how we do care work is from this lens of it being generative so that we can continue it regardless of what's happening around us. And also sometimes in spite of what's happening around us and informed by what's happening around us. And so to me, it's really just a living principle, right? That um, is embedded in all of our work, movement work. It's embedded in birth work. It's embedded in as a living principle. I feel like in all things that are centered in community and communities thriving, right? When we look at like communities that have been able to survive and thrive through deep challenge, um, there's like a a weaving, right, of sustainability as part of that through line, I think.
Mm, Latham, Miss Mama Glow. That was one of the most rich and holistic definitions of sustainability that I've heard. Thank you for grounding us in that definition. Hearing you
Mhm.
speak, it made me want to start this conversation by knowing a little bit more about who you were
Mm,
before the world started to know you as Latham Thomas or as Mama Glow. And how do you protect that version of yourself as you
mm,
move through time and space, especially today?
it's such a beautiful question. Uh, I'm actually from Oakland, California.
Wait a minute.
Um,
Sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. Why didn't I know this? I'm from Oakland.
I know, I know. So, yeah, I'm from Oakland, and so I think, like, Oakland girls are just built different. People from Oakland just there's just something in, I think, the water and in the soil and the landscape and in the streets and, in the echoes of our grandmothers hollering and, calling us home. It's something in, the air and, uh that I feel like when I even go back, I'm like, "Oh, yeah, Oakland," Like, there's just a certain vibrational energy that every place I feel like I've visited has, and Oakland just has this matrix that I feel like, is still lives inside me, so even being in New York so my son's 22, so I must be here close to 30 years now in New York. I still consider myself, like, from Oakland, even though I'm from New York now, right? Like, more of my adult life and more of my life has been spent in New York than it has been in Oakland, but I still orient around being from that place. I think that a lot of what also anchors me is, being a tourist, like a person who's really just about grounding, like being where I am, like being with feet on the ground, being on earth, being tethered and connected to like this broader ecosystem and understanding where I am. I remember like moving to New York and being like, wow, like people don't know the trees here. They don't know the medicine. They don't know the land. Like I remember growing up and walking to school and foraging the whole way. We knew where to get blackberries from. We knew where to get the plums that were unripe, that had the sour taste to them, and how to hop over the fence to get them from our neighbor's yard. We knew, like, when the figs would be ripe. We knew, like, all these things as young people just engaged with the landscape, right? And also living in a city. And
Mhm,
so I knew every single tree, right? I knew the herbs, right, that were actually medicine that we call weeds. I knew all of that coming to New York, and I was like, "Wow, people don't know that they're letting their dogs pee on medicine," you know?
mhm,
And so I think it was just a different orientation, like, being in a place that is rich in soil, rich in, and I think, like, so forgiving, if you think about, like, the soil and also what it yields in a place like California, like, we produce so much of the nation's produce, and, so living in a place where all of that was just constant, like, having access to, like, fresh fruits and vegetables and, um being in a place where it was just growing, back before they started to make it so you couldn't eat off of people's trees,
mhm,
we just knew what all the trees were, we explored, and so I think part of that is still in me, right? Like,
mm.
part of like, explorer and, somebody who's just, connected to the landscape, that keeps me tethered. I think things like living in New York City and going to the farmer's market and engaging with farmers and eating things that are local, I think are really important. I'm all about food that is, also, like, ancestrally, anchored, when I think about, like, the foodstuffs that come from, my family and the lineage, I'm connected to those foods and, like, love to eat those foods like okra and black eyed peas. I'm vegan, so I love, like, all the plants, that we were blessed with that continue to kind of weave through, our diets, that I think is grounding. Over the, winter, we did 2 different types of black eyed peas for, New Year's. I did the stew, right? And then my partner did, pickled ones, right? And so we have
Mm,
black eyed peas that we could still eat. So to me, it's like those types of things keep me tethered, and I think community is one of the things that really also just helps me to stay where I need to be, spiritually and emotionally, and building community, creating spaces for, care workers to be in community, but then also for myself, making sure that I have, uh, portals to enter into where I'm well, like with friends and family.
mhm.
And so, I do spend a lot of time with people that I love. Thankfully, I do get to, um, you know, like, make that kinda time,
Yeah.
and, I visit my son a lot, he visits home a lot, and so those are kind of things that help me. But I would say, all of what I kind of do now to take care of myself are things that, like, I was doing when I was coming up, and, um, I think that, many of us also create things that are signaling to, I think, the divine what we actually need. And so for me, it's like, when I think about building community and building spaces for care work, and I think about, doulas and birthing, I had support and community around me when I gave birth to my son. And I also felt like this everybody should have, like what I experienced, people should have that, their version of that. And so I think that that also, you know, inspired me to, create these spaces. But also I think it was isolating
Mm,
being a doula early on and not having, tethered to broader community and specifically Black people doing the work, because I was surrounded by a lot of white people who were doing doula work. And so creating a world where there were more of us and grounding that in spirituality, grounding that in African ancestral technology, grounding that in, um, like a mindfulness tradition as well, so that doulas emerge with like not just non-clinical skills and a clinical understanding of how to approach the work, but also with a connection to, their spiritual life,
mm,
and also to their living ancestry, and regardless of their background, the connection to our, mothers, grandmothers, and, those who are our ancestors and who've passed on that have left us this wisdom tradition, to unpack, explore, and to, reclaim and, actualize, right, in a time like this. So for me, it's just really like listening and staying an active listener, to be obedient to kind of what surfaces as messages around what the work should be, what it should evolve into, where I should go. And also just really moving slowly, I think, is
mm.
a big piece too. Like just intentionality is like just slow moving, being at ease, not pushing. And I feel like there's a cultural, mandate to, like, move fast and,
Yep.
right? And to me, it's like a lot of what we're doing is to decolonize that, framework and move in a slow and intentional way to build a business that is sustainable, but also, like, pours into and cares for people, right? And that can be done. um, there can be an ethical way to, like, live inside of a, uh, a paradigm that wasn't designed for us, but make it function and make it make sense and make it actually support folks. And so we constantly work towards that, like, how do we ensure that people are taken care of, that
Yeah.
work with us, that are, in community with us, and certainly those who are cared for by us, how do we make ensure that they get what they need? I think that's so important. So I think a lot of that, to answer the question, I guess, full circle is that, like, a lot of what, like, grounds me and keeps me feeling, like, protected is that, like, the work that I put out is really about shoring up support, and so I feel buoyed, I feel like I'm, buoyant in the support that comes back in other ways, right? Like, and it's not direct, like, exchange, it's, like, through other pathways I get lifted, and I feel like that helps me stay committed and being able to show up to the work, right?
Thank you for that response.
Mm.
And just the layering of what you shared. And I don't know if I forgot that you're from Oakland just in studying and supporting and following your work, or, the mom brand, I don't know what it is, but I'm so elated that you lifted up that grounding, because I think sometimes, especially Oakland girlies, just how so many of us uh, are so connected to the environment in Oakland as a way to understand these pillars of regeneration and
Mm.
connection and environmentalism and community building. It's always so beautiful and affirming when I hear that other folks who are from Oakland, especially women, Black women who are from Oakland, are like, nah, Oakland, the DNA, the DNA of the town is within me always, no matter
Yeah.
where I go. Um, and one thing that I found interesting is that I wanted my babies to be I had a home birth, 2 home births in Brooklyn, and I wanted my babies to be born in Oakland. I was like, "How can I get my babies how can I go back to Oakland so they can have that Oakland on their birth certificate?" It didn't pan out that way. But one thing that always is challenging for me is the continuum of negligence and medical racism, which of course is one reason why I decided to have a home birth. And when I think about like the recent incidences in Dallas, Texas and Indiana, and then the recent passing of Dr. Janelle Green
Mhm.
Smith, um I'm wondering, and which happened shortly after childbirth, I'm wondering if there is a part of your identity or the identity of the work that you're doing that is disrupted when you hear these type of stories, and how do you build from that?
Yeah, um, that's such a great question. I think that a couple of things come up for me. One, the impetus and the intention, and I would say what actually fuels the work is the safety and dignity of Black women and um, their ability to shine and thrive and have a birth that is transcendent. That is the intention, right? And everybody really deserves transcendence and joy and, um, to feel safety and dignity and belonging, in birth. Um, so that is always how we anchor the work, and in that, we know the continuum of the reproductive life course includes, like, menses, pregnancy, birth, abortion, loss, and menopause, and then also end of life. And along the way, we have experiences that can be, near misses. Sometimes there are losses, infant loss or a pregnancy loss, but there's also sometimes maternal deaths that occur, right? I have not personally lost a client in birthing. I do know families that have lost loved ones and very close friends and things who have lost loved ones. Um, I it doesn't disrupt the work because it's what we show up every day to work in eradicating, right?
Mm.
So every day we're constantly moving in that direction of a future, and I think about it like using the principles of like Afro-Futurism as a
Mhm.
framework, a liberatory framework, right? To anchor our everything, like our compass, like how we make decisions around how we package, how we brand, how we speak to the issues. Um, and so that lens is about like what can we build that feeds and sustains and supports us, right? Like that keeps us safe and healthy because whatever this is not what we should be sending women into.
Mm.
Because we know we don't need anyone to tell us that it's unsafe. We don't need anyone to we don't need a report, right? Like Black women have been saying since they were enslaved, right? That this was not a safe place, right? They were saying this in slave hospitals, right? They were saying this when they were being forcibly operated upon and experimented upon to actually advance medicine, right? A nascent form of medicine kind of called gynecology was completely developed as a result of the enslaved, as a result of also the end of trafficking slaves, enslaved people from Africa, and having the issue of now how do we end up with domestic labor if we can't traffic people over here? We have
Mm.
to actually ensure that they're birthed here, right? And so the this form of medicine is designed at a time when we now have to ensure that enslaved women, their bodies are valuable because they can actually give life. So we have to keep them healthy enough to deliver babies, incentivize them to have more, right? So that we can actually continue this form of forced labor, right, to fuel what will become the American economy, right, which the first form of capitalism was human capital. So we know that our bodies, right, were really on the line in that way. And so all of this informs how we show up at Mama Glow and what we teach, but also how we think about not only dismantling, but destroying and rebuilding. And so a lot of what we do is focus on building, right? Because there's many people who can take out bricks and demolish, but what we're really good at is building. And so we focus our energy on building things that help and building things that will be sustainable and building things that will help shift the culture and the conversation and like, policy and legislation and action, right? Um, so that's where we really put a lot of our energy, right? So it's like I'm shaken every time I hear a story and what I will say is a couple things come up around it. Number 1, I know that it's happening. And so I want to say to a few people, I want to say this like broadly for everyone and whoever it applies to. I want you to take it, sit with it, and maybe you integrate this. Um, I don't let anyone have permission to send me videos of lynchings,
Mm.
information about bodies being maimed. I don't wanna see it in hospitals. I don't wanna see it in Palestine. I don't wanna see it anywhere. I know it's happening. I have a consciousness that it's all happening. And so I don't think it's helpful to send people imagery where bodies that look like theirs are maimed, are handled improperly, right? There is, an act called spectacle lynching, right, which was very common, in the sort of post-slavery through the Jim Crow era. And, like we're talking about like a time where, in the early 1900s where, our grandparents, great-grandparents lived through terror, right? And where bodies were strewn across trees and made into really like an event where people would picnic and they would watch, and it would be an actual experience, right, for white people to watch Black people be treated like this, but it was also designed to terrify Black people. So to me, this is spectacle lynching, but it's through social media, right? And so we're gathering digitally to watch someone be killed, by the state in most cases. We're watching executions, right? Which desensitizes you, actually. It doesn't make you more sensitive. It actually desensitizes you. And I also don't believe that circulating this makes people more sensitive, because we have, for hundreds of years, been proximate to white people and people in power and empire, and they have always been comfortable proximate to Black pain. They've always been comfortable proximate to Black pain. So there's no world where sharing that makes them sensitized. And there's no cultural, the only reason it's actually they're responding now is because people look like them that are actually being targeted by the state. And now suddenly it's like, oh my gosh, like now they feel what we felt all along. They feel the terror that we actually have built into our tissues, terror that we've actually inherited, that we don't even have, that we don't even actually have context for. Like terror that lives in our bodies that we don't even have context for. We carry still. And it's terror that we recognize when it's visited upon us or when we see it, enacted upon someone else, right? We access that emotionally. It actually destroys our nervous systems and our health. And so it's not good in any way, shape, or form for people who have been oppressed generationally to watch, witness, and consume content that is geared towards violence and dehumanization of others, of other oppressed people and people like them. It's just not. And so I say that to say, I do think that there is an importance in making people aware of what's happening, but I want people to understand also that, like, if you look at, there's many examples of people wanting folks to see what's happening to children and women in Palestine, what was happening. People did not care. It did not make them more sensitized to see it. It actually hurt the people who were advocating more to see it. And even though people don't want to admit that it's painful to see, it is really for people who actually care, right? And so I want to give people the permission not to consume it, even though you know what's happening. You can still be a good person without taking that in and inviting that onto your spirit. Right? Like you can, and I always tell people when I see something and I like, this is going to be traumatizing, I'm like, I want to give you, I want to free you of the impulse to send me information that is inherently violent on a Monday morning when I'm starting my day. I want to ask you why the choice was to send me this and what was intended behind it. Was it to inform me? Because you could just have told me, or I could have found it out on my own, right? In the timing that I wanted to find it out, right? And so I think this is an important thing is like we can be like so attuned to what's happening and so committed to change, and so without having to see the visual casualty, we don't have to see it, right? To like, I don't need to see that a woman is being mistreated in Texas. I know they're being mistreated. I've witnessed it
Yeah.
firsthand. I see and engage with and constantly have to work alongside people who are trying to make, these places that we're birthing better. But I know that a lot of them are harmful. I don't need to watch it on the news. Like, I have Black people in my community who can tell me what has happened to them, right? So while I think it's really important that we solve problems, I also think it's important to think about how we approach these situations, that we're not exploiting a problem.
Yeah.
Because a lot of what people are doing is taking the information of someone's experience, like, oh my gosh, this happened to this woman in Texas, this woman in Indiana, and they're exploiting it
Mm.
because they're not actually doing anything to help,
Mm.
right? Or they might mention, like, I'm shaken by this, and they might, spread the word about it. But a lot of people cash in on it and use it as a way to amplify the work they're doing, or work that should be happening, or work that's already happening, and not pointing people towards solutions. So I say all that to say that, because we have cameras and because people can document these things happening, I'm grateful. I'm grateful that it can sometimes lead, it doesn't always, but in some cases it has led to consequences. It has led to accountability. In other cases, it has activated people to, be more inclined to do something. On the other side of it, right? It's helping, our legislators and policymakers take action because they see this woman. Not that we haven't had all the data all along. We've had reports, we've had, everything. I mean, documentaries, all kinds of things. And now you see a social media video and suddenly, right, some people will take action. So I'm grateful that it can be a tool, right, to bridge the gap of heart centered, like visceral connection, to where you actually, move forward and take action. But I also am cognizant that for some people, they don't realize that taking all this in
Mhm.
can incapacitate them, can make them feel forlorn, can make them feel like can really draw them down. And so you have to learn about your sensitivity level and what it is you can take in and what you can't. And what do you do to counter when you have taken in so much that is heavy or negative or, um, sad or whatever it might be, right? And how do you counter that? It's kind of like when I was younger, I learned early on that I couldn't really watch scary movies. And I still don't to this day. I don't even, if I hear a commercial and it's ominous, I cover my ears. In the movie theater, I will cover my eyes and ears. I will not take in things about violence, death, like scary. Like, I won't, because I just
Did
know
you watch
myself.
Sinners?
I painfully, I watched Sinners on the plane,
Okay.
and I wish I had those hours back of my life. It was too
Oh,
violent.
no. I was like, a lot of people who don't watch scary movies gave
It
Sinners a
was
pass.
too painful. It was
Yeah.
too much violence for me. I had
Yeah.
to cover my eyes most of the movie. And so, and I only watched it because it was a cultural phenom. It's the same thing with
Yeah.
Get Out. I only watched Get Out because there was discourse. And then I was like, okay, I have to finally, but all of these films, I'm like, no, I didn't watch anything after Get Out of Jordan Peele's. So, like, but I did watch Sinners, y'all, but like painfully watched Sinners because it was just like, everybody had watched it already. I was like, fine. And me and my friend watched it, and we were both terrified. And I was like, this is a blind lead in the blind. Like, I need somebody else who have already watched it to tell me when to cover my eyes.
Right.
but it was, but generally speaking, right, I know that about myself, so I protect myself. And so after I watched Sinners, I watched Garfield and Friends. Like, I was like, I need a palate cleanse. I watched Garfield, and I'm gonna watch followed by
Nice
Ratatouille,
palate
right?
cleanse.
And then Ratatouille, which is like my favorite. So I just like, I'm gonna do that, right? So Pixar for the win. But that's what I do to like get that off of me, right? And bring
Yeah.
levity. And so I think like we have to think about what are the things like if you consume, you know, consumption is not just what you're eating, but it's like what you're taking in emotionally and spiritually, and what actually sits and stays within you, and how that can surface, right? And so you
Yeah.
have to ensure that you have um that you take care of yourself, right? And so so when I think about that, I would say ask yourself, if you're one of those people that's sensitive, right? And if you see stuff, don't just go circulating it. Like I remember my friend was telling me how, you know, and she's black too, and she was working in this environment and it was all white folks, and she was saying how that something had happened. It was like some sort of, a death in our community essentially, right? Like it was like a nationally, like just insert any of the ones that like was um, just just painful for us because it always is, right? Because the signal is this could happen to you, right? And so she was sitting with that at work, and it was just being circulated on text like it was nothing. And
Mm.
amongst someone else's cat dying. And then there was so much energy going towards discussing this person's cat dying. And then we had just also, she's like, on the heels of like circulating a post about somebody, a human who had just died, a black person, right? And she was like, how are we spending more time talking about someone's cat than someone being gunned down by the state who was unarmed, right? It's like, you know what I'm saying? So we live in this time where that's a signal to us, right? This could happen to you. And so similarly, like we experience within policing, and what we see now with like, this federal movement to, weaponize um the customs and immigration, which enforcement agents, um, which aren't really agents, they're really slave catchers, um, some in plain clothes, right? They're untrained and they're angry and they are agents of the state. And these individuals are attacking everyone now. They're not even at the borders, right? It's like, how is this happening? But guess what? Right? That signal shows up again. This could happen to you, right? In a hospital, when a black woman hears about a near miss or a death, the signal to her is this could happen to you, right? So all of these sort of messages that surface around these incidences also are all connected to our institutions, right? Whether they're higher learning and education, whether they're the our justice system and our prison system or our hospital system, they're all carceral in nature, right? All of them. And so when Black women enter into those spaces, the message that they get, how they're treated, what experiences they have, um, are further colored, right, by who's providing that care and the context and what intersections they show up with, right? Blackness, being a woman or a femme, whether they're queer, right? Whether they're single or they're partnered, whether they have insurance, what type of insurance. Like there's so many layers, right? And so as you shape who that person is and that care and whether or not they deserve protection is what comes into question. Whether or not they deserve dignity is what comes into question, right? Because the only person up to this point who is worthy of protection as seen by the state are cis heterosexual white men, right? Those are the people who are protected. Those are the people who are centered, and anyone else is deviant from that standard. That's the standard. That's the medical standard. It's actually what we base all of our research off of. So when we talk about health outcomes, for years, we have been talking about them as it relates to the white male body. We've only, in the past 30 years, have been really researching things from women and then trying to get data on groups that form the global majority because of mistrust with the medical system. It's really hard to get a lot of that data, right? But we do have a lot of it. And yet still, the health that is centered is that of cis heterosexual white males, right? The safety that is centered is that of cis heterosexual white males. We are so concerned with their level of comfort that we have designed an entire world in service of their comfort.
Okay. That was that last bar. Okay. But you gave such critical and timely analysis in terms of the consumption, the continuous consumption of what's happening to our bodies on HD phones, right? And it's interesting because I feel like that is a colonial framework because you gave that critical context. It's a colonial framework inside of wellness, well-being spaces that a lot of people need to unlearn, period. And I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you lifted that up and it's not discussed enough in today's time. And another thing that you mentioned was building, right? Building adjacent healing spaces, building alternative empires, creating real ecosystems from a tribal lens, right? And I think that that is powerful as a form of fighting, which is what you're doing from a maternal health education point of view, from a birthing equity point of view, reproductive justice. You built a whole ass healing empire that can sit and stand outside of the confines of a colonial system that we know is harming us, that we don't have to in HD to be aware of that harm. So thank you for that. Mm. And I think I want to sort of end on Black matriarchy.
Yes.
I wrote a very vulnerable piece recently for this London-based magazine. I think it's called Listen Journal, about just my experience with birthing, and it was called Matriarchal Audacity. And so what does, and just thinking about everything that we discussed, what does matriarchy look like when it's healthy from a Black lens, Black woman?
Love that question. And I love just even because you know what it is about Black matriarchy? It is embedded in how we have evolved as a community, but also it is the only example of matriarchy. Um, there are no communities that are actually in this country practicing this in the way that we have for generations, in silence, in song, in prayer, in how we raise our children. It's so funny because everybody knows that this is our practice and part of our lineage, to the point where it is us who is hired to look after other people's children. You know, I think about a couple of things when I think about this. One, I will say, they knew of our brilliance. They always knew of it, right? and the work that is done to demonize and to make us feel like we are disempowered. I knew when I had learned that white women handed off their babies to be nursed at the breast of our foremothers, I knew then that they knew our magic.
Mm.
Because there's no world that if I think you're three-fifths human, that you would ever come in contact with my child. There's no world where if I thought you were not human, that I would let you cook and stir over my food and serve it to me. There is no world where if I thought that you weren't human, that you would live adjacent to me in any capacity. And so I think that the envy and the understanding, like the hysteria about our presence and like everything down to, I mean, the way we had to cover our hair because they were frightened because like everyone was attracted to us. The way they had to design bustles because they needed to create a body type that mimicked the Black body in the Victorian era because the men were fascinated with the Black body. The way that we caretake for each other and for our children, when it is done from a position of safety and love and nourishment and nurturing, it is the gold standard. Because the way that we nurture, and you will hear people talk about it, like even if we compliment them, they're like, like a Black woman that told me, right? It's like we pour into people. And we also are uh, like as a person who is least protected, we are the one who sets the moral standard.
Mm.
We are the one that people look to for validation. Like if a Black woman said, it's like, look at who they lift up. They lift up mammies, right? But they still lift up for virtue. It is Black women. It is the acceptance of and the cosign of and the like that they want from Black women. Like they want you to say it's okay. They want you to say, right? They want you to validate them. So there's that, right? So there is this like mammification, but there's also this kind of like this motherly like approach and like what's the word I'm looking for? Like outlook, right? That covers everything and colors everything. Because how we do what we do is always with love. How we prepare our food, how we nurture, how we braid hair, how we tend, right, is what kept us alive. And so they know that they snatched us from our homes and we figured out how to make it happen when we arrived here. And those of us who were already here, right, figured out this land, how to tend it, how to make things grow, how to make medicine, how to make food traditions, right? It was women in community with women designing what will become the the foods that we cherish today, like for menus. Like this was the women who were carrying babies on their backs and picking cotton. These are the women who were, escaping by night. These are the women who were, you know, like really smart and figuring out also how to take down a confederacy, right?
Mm.
These were the women who also knew that there was like a rich power, but a soft power that they carried, right? And they didn't have to use force, right? And so we are the offspring, we are the daughters of those who, found their way and survived. Like we are
Mm.
here because they survived. And so what I believe about like matriarchy is that it is a sacred matrix. I believe that when and the reason why they don't prioritize our life and they don't prioritize maternal health, even though everybody talks about it, it could be eradicated because guess what? Other countries have done it, right? So if it's an imperative, we can make it happen. But the reason why they don't is because they know that the Black woman is the apex of the community and she is the anchor of the community. And when we lose a Black life, and particularly a Black woman's life, when we lose her, it disorganizes our communities, right? It leaves our community distorted with grief. It means that we lose economic potential. It means that we lose that support network, that glue, right? And they know that. That's so critically important to have the Black woman's presence. I remember a neighbor of mine. I lived in this building in Harlem, and one of the neighbors, Miss Rose, she was a matriarch in our building. She wasn't the eldest. There was another woman, Miss Sarah, who was the eldest, but Miss Rose was the matriarch. Like she was the one who held everything down. I remember it'd be 2:30 in the morning, and I would hear Miss Rose hollering at kids on the corner up the block about stopping fighting and take their ass to sleep. And I was like, is that Miss Rose outside, like getting these kids off the street? She was that woman, okay? And Miss Rose had like 19 grandchildren. They would run up and through the house constantly. She had a lot going on. And I remember, and she was always, her health was always ailing. And I remember when I found out that she passed.
Mm.
And I remember when she passed, instantly what it did to the community. It was like the community was in complete disarray. There
Mm.
was violence around the corner. There was just like all kind of, I was like, wait a minute. It was a mess. Like our block was a mess. And I thought to myself, was that all Miss Rose? Like, was everything that we understood of order because she was holding everything down and she was like that glue? And she's gone and it's chaos, like nobody has any anchor. That is the value of Black matriarchy, is that we hold the universe together by our fingertips. We hold the universe together by our fingertips. We know how to nurture and make anything grow. We have had to do it in circumstances that were not ideal. So we know what it takes to build. We know what it takes to resource and insource from ourselves and create something with very little. We know how to do that. And um, so when I think about this as a model, right, of, you know, lineage, right, I believe that how we caretake, how we love, how we nurture, how we design, how we build, how we interact, like all of that could be learned from, could be studied, could be implemented because it's how we kept ourselves alive.
Mm.
And so I think that that's the way forward, really, right? Looking at our models of care, looking at our models of sustainability, our models of community practice. Because at the core of all movement building, it is always women of color, it is always Black women, it is always the women who have been oppressed and who have been on the receiving end of harm, right? And pain are the ones who stand up with the solutions and the ones who put themselves on the line and also who do it in such elegant and eloquent ways,
That
right?
part.
We have found ways to do it, to subvert and to keep ourselves alive. And so I would remind people that in the time that we're living, to think about how Black women kept their spiritual traditions alive. They weren't putting it on the internet and on Front Street, right? They were passing things down through a sacred pathway that was also encoded. They were using code, right? They were using technology, right, to protect medicine and protect information and protect legacy and pass it on, right? They were using modes to connect people across network. They created an internet to get information to people about how we were to move, how we were to get free. So if anybody we should be listening to, this is the group of people, because I'm going to tell you right now, when I saw certain things with writing on the wall, when I started to see when I was like, oh, abortion's about to be illegal. They're about to create the most draconian laws across the nation to make it impossible for people to have bodily autonomy and sovereignty. I said, they're about to take away the abortion pill. I knew it. And then all these abortion pill companies sprout up and everybody, I'm like, why are y'all marketing? Why are y'all not learning from our ancestors? How they carried information, how they made sure that people had what they needed underground, right? And I immediately was talking about, okay, here's how we could ensure that people get access to care, how they get access to the tools they need and the resources they need. But we're not putting that out on Front Street, right? We got to use some of our ancestral ways and what we've learned to carry information, right? We have to use also other pathways, because I'm going to tell you this, I was riding in a car upstate, and I looked to my right and I saw this path of almost like a pasture, and it was Queen Anne's lace. And I was like, wow, they don't even know that that's medicine that people can use to terminate a pregnancy. We have lost our indigenous knowledge about plant systems and our plant allies. We have herbal allies that our ancestors used to time pregnancy and also to terminate pregnancies. They can't take everything. So if they want to take the abortion pill, let them. We have wisdom traditions. We have medicine. They can't burn it all. What, they gonna go burn all the land? Don't tell them that it exists. Don't tell them that there are these pathways, right? Like, we have to stop telling them how we're moving, because we know how they're going to move. They've told us how they're going to move. So I just encourage people to think about like how you build a future and how you organize and how you move is not for public consumption. And how I have watched Black women and movement builders and leaders move, it's not on Front Street. It is all through an interwoven network and community. And when we build, we weave in ways that when they come, they can't figure out how we built it. That's how you got to build. You got to build in a way that you're accessing and implementing technology that they cannot destroy, right? So remember that we have those tools. Remember that that's part of the design, and that we are encoded with intelligence, with eloquence, with excellence. Like, we know how to build it. We know how to do what we're here to do. And I just want to encourage us right now to live into this moment and know that all this technology, and I'm talking about spiritual technology,
Mhm.
all of the tools that we have encountered and also used to support ourselves and to build ourselves up, like that is for this time. Like that is your spiritual armor. Like your mindfulness practices, your prayer, your root work or your herbal work or the foods, like, the community-based work you do, all of that is part of the technology, is part of what we weave to build something new, right? But all of that is your weapons of consciousness, right?
Mm.
You use to fight, right? And so we don't have to be on the front lines and draw weapons. And, I know there's going to be people who that's what they're there for. I use weapons of consciousness, right? I use different tools to be in this battle. And we all have our tools, and you just have to realize which ones you have and learn how to work your tools.
Mm. I don't
I don't
I don't
mm,
have anything to say. I am so effing full from this conversation. So to sum it up, two things quickly. Black women are the gold standard of sustainability, and our regenerative practices need to be built intercommunally and kept in-house. Those were my two really big takeaways. Thank you so much, Latham. Thank
Oh
you.
my god,
Thank you
thank
so
you.
much.
Thank you too.
Ah, this was so needed and so necessary. Um, and to close out our episode, I do a sustainability soundtrack. So I'm going to ask you 3 rapid fire questions. Are you
Okay, love
ready?
it.
Okay. What song is bringing you joy in this moment?
Oh, what song is bringing me joy? That's such a good one. I'm gonna say I'm gonna use this one because it's just like a song that makes me feel good, and I could just dance and cleans the house to it, but I will say "Golden" by Jill Scott right now,
Oh,
and
you're
always.
like the third person who's used golden. I love it. I love it.
Love me some Jill
Okay, we'll
Scott,
take
yeah.
it. Come on, Auntie Scott. Can't wait to
Right?
listen to her new album coming out.
Me too.
Okay, number 2 is what song helps you heal when life is feeling really challenging?
Ooh, that's a good one. I would say, um, anything Sade, anything Badu, on rotation if I'm just feeling blue. Anything Angie Stone.
Mm,
Like, that's probably I would probably have those 3 on rotation
I
if
know that's
I'm,
right.
feeling blue.
I know that's right.
Yeah.
R.I.P. Auntie Stone.
Auntie
And
Stone.
then and then the last one is what song sounds like sustainability?
Ooh.
Mm.
Well, it's like sustainability.
Mhm.
That's such a good ooh, you know what I would say? Probably, like, Alice Coltrane, and, I'm just thinking, like, chanting. I just I can't say a specific tune right now that I would feel like is sustainability, but I would feel like between that and the other thing I would say, uh oh my god, it's such a great question because I think about a lot of different things. I also think about, like, things growing and, like,
Mhm.
nature and blooming, and so something probably that has that kind of a sound, but my mind is a little bit perplexed by this question, so Imma say just, like, anything Alice Coltrane to me feels like it's about repetition, life force, new beginnings, openings. So I'm gonna say, turn on some Alice Coltrane.
Nice. Love it, love it, love it, love it. And those are our rapid fire questions. Thank you. I'm excited to add them to our soundtrack
Yeah.
and just let folks know how they can be connected with the org and or you and what you're building.
Thank you. So You can stay connected, mamaglow.com. It's MAMAGLOW.com. On Instagram, it's the same. And my personal is Glow Maven on Instagram, GLOWMAVEN. Um, and yeah, I would say like what we're building, obviously, if you feel called to doula work, to birth work, to care work in any capacity, we are here supporting a community of individuals who are on that path. Obviously, parents and families, but specifically care workers like who want to do this work. So if it's you, come join us for doula training at Mama Glow. You can go to mamaglow.com to learn more. We're always here to answer questions as well. And if you're someone who's on your journey or even someone who just wants to like help people stay informed, we have a really amazing toolkit that we designed called the Shared Decision Making Toolkit, which is available on mamaglow.com/your birth. And so it is an amazing downloadable guide that can support you from pregnancy to postpartum. And we did that with Aetna. And so we were able to train their care managers and also develop this tool that could then be disseminated to families and the public. So they teach it inside and we teach it outside, but it's free. So download that if you would like as well. And then the other thing I would just say is, stay fortified in this time and just, find and build community to sustain yourselves. A big piece of what we do is like gathering and bringing folks together because that's how we get free. It's how we also just like keep our hearts soft. And so if you are local to New York, feel free to check out our website to see what's happening. I know we have something with Queen Afua coming up. And we have lots of lots of cool things like that are like really about like spiritual growth and self-care, etc. So just come join us. We'd love to see you.
Yes, all of y'all tap in. And there has to be something said for the fact that we're both wearing this blue-violet color. I don't know what that
I
symbolism means,
know.
but I'm gonna take it to the
And
chest.
we both have the like straw. We both have the straw going on in the
And the straw,
background.
I'm like, I'm looking like I've been looking at you, but now I'm like looking at the whole experience, and I'm like, wait a minute, there's something symbiotic happening.
I love it.
But thank you so much, Latham,
Work
and
with
that
them.
is justice for farm workers. I know that is right.
Right.
I got all my farm books back here. I don't know if you can see some of them.
Exactly. Oakland girls stay thinking about farms.
That part. I'm trying to get a farm very soon. Goals.
And that too.
That part. All right. And that is a wrap. Whoop, whoop. Pass this conversation forward and help keep Black women's wisdom alive, protected, and in motion. See you next time.
Composting cotton and cornrows.
We've turned nothing to gold since the birth of our soul. It's ingrained in our room. Black is more than flesh and bone, planted deep in our code, and we bear the fruit. Yeah, they wonder how our stride's so bold, and our pride stone cold after all we've been through. Rich as the texture of our crown. We pass it on to the